The sun was already punishing by 8 or 7 hours, turning the Alvenia province landscape into a wavering haze that made every distant shape blur together. Specialist Claire Dawson brushed sweat off her forehead with the back of her hand and glanced at the ambulance's temperature gauge for the third time in 10 minutes. The armored M997 HMWV ambulance ran hot, but still within safe range for a Balkan summer, so everything worked exactly as expected, which meant Claire had nothing to do but sit and watch the heat shimmer above the dusty road. She was 24, 5'6", with dark brown hair pulled into a regulation bun so tight it gave her headaches, and hazel eyes that stayed alert even when the world around her offered nothing but rolling hills, dense forest, and patches of forgotten farmland. For 3 years, she'd been a combat medic, trained to give emergency care under fire. But her current assignment was far less heroic, driving an ambulance for a supply convoy, hauling gear and personnel between NATO forward bases in a disputed border zone. It wasn't the deployment she'd pictured when she enlisted. No daring rescues, no battlefield interventions, just endless driving, while the senior medics handled the real casualties. The most excitement she'd seen in 4 months was wrapping a twisted ankle and bandaging a mechanic's busted knuckle. Her rig sat fourth in a line of 7 vehicles, 3 supply trucks ahead, 2 behind, and Humvees with 50 caliber guns guarding both ends. A standard convoy setup through a region where separatist ambushes were possible but unlikely. They'd halted for a maintenance check at a small fuel station roughly 40 kilometers from base. Security swept the perimeter. Drivers checked their engines. The medics assigned to her unit, Sergeant Elias Ward and Corporal Maya Lopez, had gone to refill canteens and hit the latrine, leaving Claire alone in the driver's seat, door open, trying to catch any trace of breeze while questioning her career choices. She'd joined the Army to matter, to save lives, to serve something greater than herself. Her father had been a paramedic for 30 years, a man who lived for emergencies, and she'd grown up on stories of the lives he saved through instinct and skill. When he died of a heart attack her senior year of high school, she'd sworn to honor him by doing the same job, only in uniform, helping soldiers instead of civilians. The reality hadn't lived up to the dream. Sure, she'd gotten great medical training. Sure, she was helping. Technically. But the last 4 months had been a loop of driving, waiting, and patching up paper-cut injuries any civilian could treat. She felt her skills rusting, her ambition wasting away. Claire checked her watch. 13 minutes into a 15-minute stop. Ward and Lopez would be back soon, they'd mount up, and she'd spend another dull day heading toward another uneventful base. Except this time, she was wrong. At 0851, a rocket-propelled grenade ripped across the road and smashed into the lead security Humvee, blowing the calm apart in one deafening instant. Claire's training kicked in before her mind caught up. She threw herself from the driver's seat, dove to the far side of the ambulance, and pressed against the armor for cover as her brain scrambled to understand what had just happened. The lead Humvee was engulfed in flames, thick black smoke curling up from its ruined engine block. Claire couldn't tell if anyone had made it out. A second later, the air erupted in a deafening storm of gunfire. Rounds sliced past, clanging off metal as the convoy was hit from more than one side. She caught sight of muzzle flashes through the trees to the north and east, separatist fighters hidden in dense cover about 200 meters away. The ambush had been carefully set, trapping the convoy on open ground with nowhere to hide, using the burning lead vehicle to halt them in place. Then the rear Humvee's 50 caliber machine gun thundered to life, a sound that was both terrifying and reassuring at once. Its gunner raked the northern tree line with tracer fire, while militants to the east kept shooting, pinning the convoy in a deadly crossfire. Claire's radio burst alive with chaos. All vehicles, contact north and east. Multiple hostile positions. Return fire. Medic, casualties in the lead truck. That word, casualties, cut straight through her fear. People needed help. That was her mission. She pressed her transmit key with shaking fingers. Ambulance 1 copies. Casualties in the lead truck. Where are Ward and Lopez? They were the seasoned medics, the ones who'd actually worked on wounded under fire. She needed them. A different voice crackled back, tight with urgency. Ambulance 1, your team's pinned inside the fuel point building. They can't reach you. Lead vehicle's got at least 2 wounded, maybe more. We need a medic now. A chill ran through her. Ward and Lopez were trapped. The lead Humvee was full of injured soldiers, and she was the only one close enough to act. She forced herself into focus. The wreck was maybe 30 meters ahead. Open ground between, no real cover. Crossing it meant running straight through hostile fire. But those men might die waiting. Her father's words echoed in her head. The hardest part of medicine is going where the patient is, even when it scares you. Claire yanked the aid pack from the ambulance. Bandages, fluids, meds, everything she'd need to keep someone breathing, and slung her rifle over her shoulder. The M4 felt heavier than it ever had on the range. 3 deep breaths, then she keyed the radio. All stations, Ambulance 1 moving to the lead truck. I need suppressive fire. The commander's voice snapped back. Negative. You'll be exposed. Wait for... But she was already moving. Claire bolted from cover, the aid bag thumping against her back, rifle in one hand. 30 meters might as well have been 30 miles. Bullets hissed past, smacking the dirt at her feet, snapping the air beside her head. She dove behind the wrecked Humvee, pressing herself against the scorched armor, heart hammering so hard she could hear it over the firefight. She'd just sprinted through a kill zone and was still alive. The rush left her trembling. Medic here, she shouted toward the cab. How many wounded? A strained voice yelled back. 2 down. Gunner's bad. Driver's hit with shrapnel. Rest of us pinned, but okay. Claire slid around to the passenger side, shielded best she could from incoming rounds. The door hung twisted but moved when she pulled. Inside, the driver, his name tape read, Reed, was bleeding from dozens of metal splinters across his arms and face. Painful but treatable. The gunner was far worse. Unconscious, bleeding out from his chest and legs. Every breath a rattle. Help me get him out, Claire ordered the others, a lieutenant and a specialist, shaken but still moving. Together they dragged the gunner free of the turret, struggling in the cramped space while bullets slammed into the hull. The militants weren't letting up, and from the sound they were edging closer through the trees. They laid the man behind the vehicle and Claire went straight to work. Shrapnel had shredded his chest. His breathing told her a lung was collapsing, and his left leg was bleeding fast where the femoral artery had been torn. Minutes, maybe less. Her hands moved before she could think. Training taking over. She cinched a tourniquet high on the leg, stopping the deadly flow, then drove a needle into his chest to relieve the pressure and get that lung working again. Every move was automatic, deliberate, the rhythm of a medic doing what she was born to do under fire. Claire secured an IV line, pushing fluids fast to fight the soldier's shock. Around her, bullets still cracked and pinged off metal, each impact closer than the last. The convoy's return fire thundered in every direction. The rear Humvee's 50 cal roared, rifles barked from cover, and a saw rattled out bursts that shook the air. But the militants weren't letting up. If anything, their fire was growing heavier. Ambulance 1, this is actual. Colonel Graves' voice came through the radio, urgent and tight. We've got enemy units flanking from the east, moving in through the tree line. They're setting up for an assault. That ambulance needs to be mobile now. What's your status?" Claire kept one hand on a bleeding wound and keyed her mic with the other. "Actual. I've got 2 critical casualties at the lead truck. I need 5 minutes to stabilize before transport." Graves didn't hesitate. "We don't have 5 minutes. They're closing in. Get those men loaded and fall back now." She looked down at the gunner. Fluids running into his arm. The chest seal she'd just placed glistening with blood. Moving him too soon could kill him. Staying put could kill them all. The specialist beside her, Reed's teammate, spoke up. "Ma'am, I can carry the critical. Reed can walk with help, but we gotta move." Claire made the call. "Do it. Get them to the ambulance. I'll cover you." She grabbed her M4, shifted to a crouch, and scanned the eastern tree line. Through the shimmering heat, she spotted figures slipping between trunks, fighters advancing through the woods. Reed and the specialist hauled the wounded gunner, stumbling under the weight, inching toward the ambulance. Claire raised her rifle, heart pounding, ready to cover their retreat. Then she saw him. One militant stepping into the open about 150 meters away, RPG on his shoulder, taking aim at the convoy's center. In an instant, she realized what would happen if that rocket hit a fuel truck. The whole line would erupt. Her sights were already on him. She slowed her breathing, steady as she'd practiced on the range, and squeezed the trigger. The M4 cracked. Through the scope, she saw the man jerk backward, the launcher tumbling from his hands unfired. She'd just killed someone. The thought flickered through her, but there was no time for guilt. 2 more fighters broke from the trees, sprinting across open ground. She fired controlled bursts, 2 shots, then 2 more, forcing them to dive for cover. Whether she hit them didn't matter. They stopped moving forward. Reed and the specialist reached the ambulance with the casualty. Claire pulled back, retreating 1 step at a time, firing at every muzzle flash that appeared in the trees. Bullets snapped past her, spraying dirt, clanging off metal, but somehow none found her. She slid behind the ambulance's armored rear and climbed inside. The gunner was still alive, barely. Her earlier treatment had bought him time. Reed bled from his face and arms but could still move. The specialist, his tag read Holt, jumped into the driver's seat. Claire took her place in back. "Where are Ward and Lopez?" she demanded suddenly, remembering them. "Still pinned in the fuel station," Holt shouted over the chaos. "Commanders coordinating fire to pull them out." As if on cue, the battle outside surged louder. The 50 cal roared again, joined by dozens of M4s spitting toward the forest. Through the ambulance's small window, she glimpsed the building where her medics were trapped, militants firing from the northern tree line to keep them down. Then Graves' voice filled the radio once more. "All units, prepare to move. We're breaking contact. Withdraw south. Ambulance, you're third in line. When I give the signal, move fast and don't stop until you're clear of the kill zone." It made tactical sense. They were outnumbered, bleeding, about to be overrun. But leaving Ward and Lopez behind twisted something in Claire's chest. She grabbed her mic. "Actual, we can't leave them," Graves answered sharply. "They've got cover and supplies. They'll hold until we send relief. You've got critical wounded who'll die without surgery. That's your priority." He was right, but the words burned. Then an RPG slammed into the fuel truck just ahead of them. The explosion tore the world apart. A fireball surged skyward, shaking the ambulance, raining metal and burning fuel across its roof. "Move! Move! Move!" Graves shouted through the radio. "All vehicles, execute withdrawal." Holt jammed the accelerator. The ambulance lurched forward, tires screeching as they followed the convoy south through smoke and chaos. Claire braced herself against the wall, still holding the IV line in one hand. The wounded rocked with every bump. Gunfire chased them down the road, rounds sparking off armor, one bullet punching through the rear door but hitting nothing vital. Behind them, the rear Humvee's 50 cal fired non-stop, covering their escape. They'd gone maybe 200 meters when another explosion ripped the air behind them, an RPG or maybe a buried mine, sending another shockwave through the convoy. Someone shouted over the radio about more casualties in a rear vehicle. The convoy was being torn apart piece by piece. "Actual, this is trail vehicle," a strained voice crackled through. "We're hit, engine's dead, can't keep up, falling behind." Colonel Graves responded immediately, the weight of command heavy in his tone. "Trail vehicle, can you self-recover?" "Negative," came the reply. "We're sitting ducks out here." Claire glanced through the ambulance's small rear window. The crippled truck was shrinking behind them, smoke rising as it lagged farther back. Soldiers were still in there. If left alone, they'd be overrun in minutes. Her gut made the choice before her brain could argue. "Holt, stop the ambulance." "What? Ma'am, we're mid-withdrawal. We can't." "That vehicle's got wounded. Stop the ambulance now." Holt froze for a heartbeat, then stomped the brakes. The heavy tires screeched against the pavement. Claire grabbed her M4, threw open the rear door, and jumped out, hitting the ground hard before ducking behind the bumper for cover. 50 meters back, the disabled truck sat motionless under a hail of gunfire, militants advancing through the forest toward it. She could see soldiers scrambling from the wreck, diving into the roadside ditch and returning fire in desperation. She pressed her radio, voice calm, though her pulse thundered. "All stations, this is Ambulance 1. I'm moving to assist the disabled vehicle, providing security and medical aid. Need suppression on the north and east tree line." Graves' voice barked back instantly. "Negative, Ambulance 1. You're not a combat soldier. Get back in that vehicle." But Claire was already moving, crouched low, sprinting along the ditch as bullets shredded the grass above. The rear Humvee's 50 cal roared over her head, hammering the forest edge, keeping the militants from rushing the open field. She spotted figures 100 meters out, trying to flank the disabled truck. When she reached the ditch, 4 soldiers huddled there, 2 still fighting, 2 bleeding. "Medic here," Claire called, sliding into the mud beside them. One had a bullet through his shoulder, painful but survivable. The other's abdomen was bleeding badly. She tore open her pack and got to work. "Ma'am, what are you doing here?" one of the uninjured shouted. "Convoy's leaving us." "No one's being left," she said firmly, pressing down on the abdominal wound. "We're getting out together. How much ammo?" 3 mags each, maybe. "Not enough if they rush," she muttered, working faster, wrapping bandages and injecting painkillers while gunfire cracked overhead. Voices echoed from the trees, too close now. She looked up, grabbed her rifle. "Can you carry the wounded?" "Yes, ma'am, but where?" "Back to the ambulance, 50 meters that way. When I fire, you move. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just go." They stared at her like she'd lost her mind, but nodded. Claire took position where she could see the tree line and opened up, firing steady bursts at every flash or shadow. Her goal wasn't precision. It was suppression. Keep their heads down, buy time. Magazine empty, reload, fire again. Behind her, she heard the soldiers moving, grunting under the weight of the wounded, shouting encouragement. "We're at the ambulance," someone yelled. Claire began pulling back, still firing as she retreated. 20 meters in, movement on her right, 3 militants breaking from cover, 30 meters out, sprinting straight at her. close enough to see their faces, to smell the gunpowder. No hesitation. Her rifle snapped up on instinct. 2 shots center mass. First target dropped. Pivot. 2 more. Second one fell. The third fired, bullets slicing past her head, the shock wave brushing her cheek. She fired back, 3 clean rounds. He crumpled before he hit the dirt. 3 down in less than 5 seconds. Claire's hands trembled, her heart pounding in her chest. But she was still breathing, and still moving. She kept firing in short, controlled bursts as she backed toward the ambulance, laying down suppressive fire at every flicker of motion along the tree line. When she finally dove into the back, Holt slammed the accelerator and the vehicle roared forward, falling back in line with the convoy that had slowed to cover her wild rescue. The ambulance was packed tight with the wounded now. The gunner she'd stabilized earlier, Private Reed, with his shrapnel wounds, and the 2 new casualties she'd pulled from the disabled truck. Claire moved frantically among them, checking pulses, adjusting IV drips, swapping soaked dressings for fresh ones. Her gloves and uniform were slick with blood, her body drenched in sweat, her nerves running entirely on adrenaline. The convoy sped south, engines howling as they put mile after mile between themselves and the ambush. Eventually, the sound of gunfire faded, replaced by the dull hum of tires on open road as the forest gave way to flat, sun-baked fields. After what felt like hours, but was barely 20 minutes, they rolled into a fortified NATO checkpoint, where a quick reaction force waited to secure the survivors. Medics rushed to meet them as soon as the ambulance stopped, pulling the wounded out one by one. Claire stumbled after them, her legs shaky as a wet paper, rifle still clutched in her hands, staring blankly at the rising heat shimmering above the asphalt. Colonel Nathan Graves. The convoy commander, whose voice had filled her radio through the chaos, approached with a look torn between disbelief and respect. "Specialist Dawson," he said slowly, "what you just did was either the bravest or the dumbest thing I've seen in 20 years of service. Maybe both." Claire barely had the strength to meet his eyes. "Are my patients going to make it, sir?" Graves nodded. "Doctors say yes, thanks to your field work and the fact you refused to leave them behind. The gunner from the lead Humvee would have bled out if you hadn't reached him. And those troops from the wrecked truck? They'd be dead or captured if you hadn't gone back." He paused, his voice softening. "But you're not an infantry soldier specialist. You're a medic. You treated wounds, fought off hostiles, pulled people out under fire. That's far beyond your job." Claire wiped her forehead with a shaking hand. "With respect, sir, my job is to save lives. Sometimes that takes more than a bandage and an IV." The colonel studied her quietly, then gave a slow nod. "You're right about that. Dismissed, specialist. Get checked by the medics, grab some water, and breathe. You've earned it." Claire turned toward the aid tent, her knees threatening to give out. Her mind replayed the madness of the last hour, sprinting through gunfire, working on the bleeding under relentless attack, taking lives to save others, refusing to abandon anyone who still drew breath. Somehow, impossibly, she was still standing. A familiar voice shouted her name. Claire turned and saw Sergeant Elias Ward and Corporal Maya Lopez sprinting toward her, their uniforms torn, faces streaked with dust and guilt. The quick reaction team had pulled them out of the fuel station. "Dawson," Ward said as he reached her, breath ragged. "We heard everything. You treated wounded under fire, went back for downed soldiers, held off a flank by yourself." He shook his head. "That's not something they teach in basic medic school." Claire managed a faint, tired smile. "Sure it is," she said. Surprised by how steady her voice sounded, They teach us to go where the casualties are, no matter how bad it gets. To do whatever it takes to keep people alive. That's the whole point. Lopez blinked at her in disbelief. Claire, most medics don't do half that after years in combat. How'd you stay focused? Claire thought for a long moment before answering. My dad was a paramedic. He used to say you don't have time to panic or doubt yourself when someone's bleeding out. You just handle what's in front of you. The patient, the wound, the threat. Solve one problem, then the next. That's all I did today. Ward exhaled. Well, whatever you did, it worked. You saved at least 6 people. The gunner's in surgery but stable. Reed's gonna pull through. And those 2 from the truck are both recovering. The convoy got out because you bought us time. The weight of it all began to press on her. The realization that she'd actually saved lives, exactly what she'd joined for. But there was another truth she couldn't ignore. She'd also taken lives. Those militants she'd shot, they were dead because of her. And that would stay with her. Dana Major, from the medical corps, appeared and gestured for her to follow. Specialist Dawson, debriefing time. The battalion commander wants your full account. For 3 hours, she sat in that tent, recounting every moment. Every wound, every decision, every burst of gunfire. Officers listened, taking notes, trying to understand how an ambulance driver with barely any combat time had performed like a seasoned veteran. When it ended, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison Voss, the commander himself, stood and addressed her directly. Specialist Dawson, I'm recommending you for the Silver Star. What you did out there wasn't duty, it was valor. You saved lives through courage and skill under fire. Claire felt her throat tighten. Sir, I just did my job. Voss shook his head. Your job is to drive an ambulance and patch people up behind the line. You volunteered for combat, engaged the enemy, and carried out rescues under fire. That's not routine, that's exceptional. Over the next few days, word spread fast. Claire Dawson, the quiet ambulance driver who turned into a fighter when it mattered. Soldiers she'd never met stopped her to shake her hand. The men she'd saved visited to thank her in person. The gunner sent a message saying she'd saved his life. Reed and the others from the truck dropped by too, grateful she hadn't left them behind. Ward and Lopez treated her differently now, half pride, half awe. They started asking for her input on trauma cases, admitting that what she'd learned under fire was beyond any classroom lesson. 3 weeks after the ambush, Claire was reassigned to a forward surgical team, promoted to a sergeant, and given advanced medical training. But the real change was internal. She'd joined thinking saving lives meant medicine alone. Bandages, IVs, clean lines of protocol. That day in Alvenia had shown her otherwise. Sometimes it meant sprinting through bullets. Sometimes it meant picking up a rifle to protect the ones you were trying to save. Sometimes it meant making choices no one should have to make, and doing it anyway. It meant being more than a medic, a protector, a fighter, a leader. 6 months later, Sergeant Claire Dawson stood over a young specialist on a stretcher, blood pooling beneath him. He was pale, terrified, whispering, "Am I gonna make it, Sergeant?" Claire met his eyes, voice steady and sure. "Yeah, you're gonna make it. I've got you. You'll be fine." And he was, because that ambush in Alvenia had taught her the truth. Saving lives isn't just about medicine. It's about refusing to give up, refusing to run, and doing whatever it takes to bring your people home. Saving lives, Claire realized, had never been just about medical training or sterile procedures. It was about grit, loyalty, and the refusal to give up no matter how bad it got. It was about never leaving anyone behind, about standing between danger and the people who counted on you. She'd been just an ambulance driver once, until 28 enemies hit them and the world demanded she become something else. She'd picked up her rifle and fought back. She'd patched shattered bodies under fire. She'd refused to abandon the wounded, even when survival meant running. She'd done things she never imagined she could, found strength she didn't know she had, and learned that sometimes the best medicine isn't in a syringe. It's in refusing to let your patient die. Her father would have been proud. And Sergeant Claire Dawson, once an ambulance driver and now a combat medic, finally understood what he'd always meant when he said that the heart of emergency medicine was simple. Go where they need you most, especially when it's dangerous, because that's when they need you the most. Years later, when she trained new medics, Claire would tell them about that day in Alvenia province, about sprinting through gunfire, treating the wounded while bullets tore through metal, and fighting when she had to. She'd remind them that being a medic isn't only about skill, it's about courage, resolve, and the iron promise to never leave a soul behind. She'd tell them that when the moment comes, they'll find power they never knew they had, that their training will carry them through what seems impossible, because she'd lived it. She'd been just a driver until the day 28 fighters attacked, and in those brutal minutes, she became everything her soldiers needed her to be. She saved 6 lives, earned the respect of an entire battalion, and discovered exactly who she was meant to be when the world caught fire. The wolf never announces itself to the flock. Sometimes it's just an ambulance driver, until the moment comes when the sheep need protecting. Then the wolf rises, and lives are saved because someone refused to run, refused to break, and refused to leave anyone behind. Thanks for watching. Every woman has a story worth telling. Join us next time on Major Tom's Tales.